No matter how carefully you organize your life, a certain percentage of the pain you experience is entirely out of your hands. When that arrow hits the target, there's nothing you can do about it. There's an ancient Buddhist parable about the two arrows, and modern psychology, including Sigmund Freud's work, backs up its core premise. Roughly 25% of the pain we face is completely unavoidable. This is the first arrow. It represents the natural, built-in discomforts of simply being alive. It's everything from the reality of aging and sickness down to random accidents like stubbing your toe on a rock. Trying to fight that initial 25% is a waste of your energy. It is the universal baseline of the human experience. Everyone gets hit by the first arrow. But right after that first impact, something else happens. We get hit by a second arrow, only this one is entirely self-inflicted. It's the immediate follow-up strike of judgment, blame, and the internal argument with reality. We ask ourselves, why am I so careless? Why did I do that? Our nervous systems are wired as meaning-making machines. When we experience raw, senseless pain, we compulsively try to build a narrative around it to make it make sense. This diagram shows exactly how that narrative building goes wrong. You have a fixed block of pain, but it gets multiplied by your resistance, resulting in a massive, overwhelming block of suffering. But look at the inverse logic. If that resistance variable drops to 0, the final block of suffering shrinks dramatically. That means the remaining 75% of our suffering is entirely avoidable. The singular mechanism we use to drop the bow and stop firing that second arrow is deliberate, active kindness. You cannot reason your way out of firing the second arrow. When your nervous system is trapped in a defensive fight-or-flight state, the logic centers of your brain are effectively offline. This requires a bottom-up approach. Before any cognitive shift can happen, you have to establish a physical baseline of safety in your body. We do this through specific, seemingly minor physical interventions. Techniques like bilateral breathing, breathing alternately through the left and right sides, or rhythmic body tapping actually coax the nervous system out of its defensive posture. There is a technique called the hands of kindness. It involves a deliberate physical application, placing your hands over your heart, resting your cheek in your palm, or holding your belly. These specific touches bypass the brain's reasoning centers entirely. They act as direct biological signals that artificially manufacture a physical state of safety. When you actually succeed in administering this kind of somatic intervention to yourself, it often triggers unexpected psychological friction. It can feel intensely vulnerable. It's like an armored beetle suddenly flipped onto its back, with its soft, unprotected belly exposed to the elements. That vulnerability surfaces because you are forced to sit in the silence of your unmet human needs, like the need for safety or connection, instead of hiding behind your usual daily distractions. Enduring that raw exposure is a necessary hurdle. To actually grow, you have to survive the discomfort of receiving your own compassion. Once the body is biologically calm, you can move to the top-down cognitive approach. The mind is finally ready to engage. This relies on two initial pillars of self-compassion. The first is mindfulness, which means observing the pain objectively without adding judgment. The second is common humanity, recognizing that this specific struggle is a shared, universal experience. Then comes the third pillar, self-kindness. It requires breaking the cycle of self-blame by asking yourself one radical question: what would be kind right now? When you meet a challenging or unworthy part of yourself with that question, the internal conflict begins to soften. Instead of the usual cycle of self-punishment, this collision of kindness and discomfort creates the space necessary for an emotional wound to actually close. This acceptance, but we need to define what that actually means in practice. Acceptance does not mean condoning bad behavior, and it doesn't mean accepting a transgression against you. It strictly means accepting how you feel about the event. This specific internal acceptance allows you to reclaim your personal power. You untether yourself from external validation. You no longer have to wait for a change in circumstances or an apology that might never arrive just to heal. This animation shows a concept called your window of tolerance. Consistent somatic and cognitive practice widens this window, expanding your ability to sit with sharp, jagged pain without automatically firing that second arrow. Pain is inevitable, But by treating kindness as a physiological strategy rather than a vague sentiment, we gain the ability to leave that second arrow unshot.